Who here has a question this morning? Yes.
Real quick on the interpretation of that First Samuel passage. So the ESV calls it the city as a mother in Israel. Did you look at that at all?
Well, I looked at the language there, and I believe the language itself does not support it. In fact, the older commentators don't even address it that way. One older commentator says, well, maybe she was an official in the place. Yeah. Yeah, I just don't see it in the language or in the people, shall I say, that I respect as that. I just happen to wonder if our modern ideas have crept into our translation philosophy. I don't know if that happened or not. Possible. We did not go through the entire song there of Deborah, but if you read that whole song there of Deborah and Barak, I should say, things were really bad. It was very violent for them. Really bad. If you get a chance to read that, you'll see what I'm talking about. Things were bad. Yeah, Brad.
I was reading a little bit into Joab, and the more I was reading, I was wondering why he killed Amasa. And I read it further, and how you said that he was extremely loyal. Could an argument be made that he's more loyal to Israel than he is to David because he kept going against his word? And I'm suspecting he killed Amasa because he thinks Amasa wouldn't have killed Sheba. So Joab's kind of taken everything into his own hand because he's loyal to Israel, not to David.
Yeah. Joab is quite the character study. If you want a character study sometime, Joab is the guy. And I think you're correct in that he knew Amasa was a Benjamite, Sheba, Benjamite. Let's bring him back, let's have a trial or whatever. One thing about Joab, he always knew what was good for David. Always knew it. He knew, for example, that if Absalom lived, David's kingdom was going to be in trouble. Absalom was a tremendous politician. David was not so much of a politician. He was a warrior, he was a king, but he didn't know how to get elected. He never had to be elected. He was elected by one guy, Samuel. That's all it really took. That guy Absalom, he knew politics, and he knew how to whip up the crowd. And Joab knew this. We see the same thing with Joab later on when David numbered the people. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not. David wanted to number the people, and Joab knew that it was going to bring God's curse on it, so he goes against David there. So I think if Joab would do anything, it seems to me, to protect David, and I think to protect the children of Israel from being attacked. And so he did. He went against the wishes of other people. We know he went against David's wishes at least twice, directly against them, at least twice. I think other times as well. 3 times if you want to count the killing of Amasa, really. He went against his wishes in the case of Absalom, and he went against his wishes in the numbering of the people. So, I honestly, I almost, Brad, I started to do this, and I gave it up. I wanted to actually preach the sermon, like a Mother's Day sermon, based on that passage in Samuel, 2 Samuel 20. And I was going to preach the sermon based on what she said, and how she knew the character of Joab, and then do a character study on Joab. But I gave that up because his character is just too complicated for me. He's just too complicated.
Is he a bad guy?
All right, let's do a poll right now. I just don't know about that guy. I just don't. The guy was, he is, if you want a chief of staff, he's your guy. He's not going to stab you in the back. He's going to be loyal, and he's going to be looking out for your best interests all the time. And he went out and he fought battles for the children of Israel, and he won them. I don't know, John, what do you think about Joab? And Seth, I'm going to ask you guys what you think, and then Seth.
My thought is that Joab was, in the Bible, he's the first practitioner of what we today call realpolitik.
Yeah.
Real politics. He looks at the reality of a situation like Nixon did with China and said, we're ignoring 1 billion people and pretending they're not there. So he engaged in realpolitik and he opened China. Was it the right thing to do? Probably. Were these the right things to do that Joab did? And yet, you can engage in that kind of policy and do it in a way that's not godly or biblical. And that's why I see Joab. He was treacherous, but he used any means to achieve the right end, but he used the wrong means often to achieve. So the answer to Brad's question, is he a good guy or bad guy, is yes. He was a good guy and a bad guy. That's the way I see it.
I think it's good to talk about him because he is an absolute character study in the Bible. I don't know, Seth, if you have any thoughts on.
Pretty much the same, it just depends what side of the knife you're on.
Yeah.
So, but no, I mean, I do think, yeah, he did tend to always do, I think ultimately, as John said, end goal was always the right thing as far as in the interest of Israel according to what, what they were supposed to be and do as a nation. But you certainly have to question some of the means.
No doubt. Anybody else with an opinion on this? Yes. I'll give you a question. That's fine, go ahead. I didn't see another hand anymore.
Joab asks for Sheba, says, hand over this one man and I'll withdraw from the city. But then, she decides to give him his head instead.
I think it means the same thing. Yeah, I mean, we know from what happened with Absalom, just a chapter before, that would have been the exact same thing. So it was. I think what happens here is you get perhaps a lot more unity, if you will. If she goes, and remember it says she went, she talks to everybody, right? And they decide to hand over his head. I think that way was. I mean, it's kind of gross to talk about, but I think that was kind of the way, really the cleanest way to do it. The cleanest way is, you're dragging the guy. What they probably did was said, small room, right? Otherwise, you're dragging the guy through the city, right? We already have all kinds of dissension going on here, and you're dragging him through, and he has supporters along. Now you might be bringing the conflict inside. You take care of it that way. Man, that's the way to really solve it fast. Here's his head, everybody. It's too late for you to rally around him. So I think that was actually part of her wisdom there, really. I think she knew this. It's amazing to me that she apparently was the only one that thought of this. Hey, Joab's here to get Sheba. Can we just make this between Joab and Sheba and leave the rest of us alone? No one else apparently thought of it. Apparently. Yes, Wes.
David, at the end of his last comments on Joab.
Yeah, his comments are not very encouraging.
Nice. He says, therefore, do according to your wisdom and do not let his gray hair go down to the grave in peace. So I guess David thought that he did Israel wrong by the thing he did.
Well, David was. I think if you read, I think in that same passage, he might list Joab's sins. I'm not sure if he does or not.
So he shed the blood of war.
Yeah, there it is.
Time,
Right.
put the blood of war in his belt, and that was around his waist and on the sandals that were on his feet.
Does he mention Amasa that he killed?
Yeah,
I think he does in that passage.
Abner
Yeah.
and Amasa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he might even say two people are better than him. Does he say that there?
I don't see anything like that.
Okay.
Not yet.
I might have that better than he. Right, John?
Yes.
Better than he. Yeah, David has some pretty rough things to say about him. What I don't understand is why does David, I don't understand this, I've tried to figure this out. Why does David give that to Solomon to solve? Why didn't David solve Joab? And maybe David was a practitioner of realpolitik too, Hey, he deserves to die, but where else can I find a chief of staff like this? So I'll leave him live, and Solomon, you take care of it. I don't really understand all that. I've been wrestling with that for years and don't quite get it yet.
It doesn't help either that Joab goes to the altar. You know, like, what are we supposed to think about? Like, what is he repenting? Is he, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, because he goes to the altar to save his life. And Solomon says, no, okay, well, if he's not going to leave the altar, you can cut him down right there at the altar then. We're going to solve this. So I don't know. Joab, to me, is a likable guy, and he had some tremendous qualities. What a loyal friend. But he was a murderer. He was a murderer. He murdered people. Yes?
You talk about, in order for power, protection, peace, and things like that, we've pretty much lost that. What do we gotta do to get it back? Like, what do we need to do? You talked about future generations and teaching. What does it look like from a practical, sitting here at IRBC, encouragement to mothers so that they don't walk out of here feeling overwhelmed with what they have to do? You know, drive a peg through somebody's head.
Yeah, right. If you don't drive a peg through somebody's head, you're not a good mother. Yeah. Here's what I'm being impressed with, is that building up a godly culture takes time and generations. In other words, you need the godly grandfather to teach the grandchildren. You need the godly parents to teach the children. We're always interested in revival, yes. But as I've said before, sometimes that revival doesn't seem to go on for all that long if you don't have the generations. I'm going to give an example, and I don't know who I was speaking with about this. I was just having a conversation with someone. Who was I? Was it someone in here I was talking to? I was talking about the time I had to deliver a speech at a homeschool graduation ceremony. Okay. And Seth. And I actually had to change. I knew what I was going to say, but then I actually had to change my speech a little bit because these kids that were graduating were talking about their parents. And so when you talk about your parents, you're talking about the great things they've done, right? Like, I was graduating, and my parents, they took us to Disney World, and my dad had a great job, and I got a bicycle at 14 and a car at 16 or whatever. But it was none of that. It was none of that stuff. These kids got up and talked about their parents, and it was all small stuff. It was all the stuff they saw every day that their parents doing. And I began to think about that. And I began to think about the fact that here we are, this graduation, it's a big ceremony. And what I did then was I changed my speech a little bit to challenge them to be good at the small stuff. Because normally the graduation is like, we got our degree now we're going to go conquer, the world. Look out, world, we got our degrees. But they didn't talk about their parents conquering the world. They talked about their parents doing the small things that they saw in their family. So I challenged them then to do the small things in their family. And that really is my challenge every time I talk about these kinds of things. And that is, mom and dad, husband, wife, do those small things. Because we're not turning around anything until we can do those small things. And so, yeah, time, yes. And again, as you've heard me say before, Dave, I'm sure, it took us time to give it away for nothing. It's going to take time to get it back. It took them 20 years of horrible oppression, quite frankly, to get it back. I'm more in the 20 minutes than the 20 years kind of a guy. But we see that throughout the scriptures, especially in the book of Judges, especially. We see in the book of Joshua too, where God was very specific. It's going to take you time to do this. It's going to be a process. My big encouragement is let's take our home job seriously, because if we don't take that seriously, I think that's we trade that, right? Let's go down to the rally and abandon the family. You see what I'm saying? Maybe we're better off abandoning the rally or whatever big thing. I've been on those things, and not abandon the family. Stay there at home. Maybe you're doing a whole lot a lot more good teaching your children the law of God at home on an evening than you are being some real big flashy thing. And that's constantly my challenge. What we can do, yeah, there's a lot you can do right there in your home, being a mother in Pennsylvania. Anybody have any more to add to that or subtract, maybe? Hey, John?